You're listening to The Pulse, podcast of the Missouri State Teachers Association.
I'm Aurora Meyer, and today I'll be talking with Jamie Vollmer, the keynote speaker at our 2013 MSTA convention here in Columbia. Thanks so much for joining us, Jamie.
You are quite welcome.
Let's get started by telling us a little bit about your background.
Well, I am not a professional educator, which usually immediately makes a room full of teachers nervous when they have to listen to the speaker who has no real experience in their shoes. I got into this world in a funny way. I was running a small ice cream manufacturing company in my adopted state of Iowa. I know nobody from Iowa can cross the border and tell you people anything, but it turns out I'm not from Iowa. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I moved here to help a buddy run this ice cream company, and we got famous. People magazine picked our company as the best ice cream in America, and as a result of that, the chief state school officer in Iowa asked me to join a group of business leaders to talk about the future of public schools. That's how I got into this 28 years ago. And over a period of time, I've gone from what you might call a somewhat ardent critic of the whole scene, convinced that schools needed to change, convinced that the teachers, administrators, and support staff were the enemy, and convinced if we would just run it like a business, everything would be okay. I started with that mindset, and over a period of years, educators bit their teeth, bit their tongue, and smiled at me and helped me see the error of my ways. And so for the last 2 decades, I guess, I have been very proud to be called a friend of public education, and I mainly talk about how to build support for public schools.
That is quite the evolution, I think. Well, the keynote topic that you've chosen for us is exactly that, developing support for schools. Tell us a little bit about what our members can expect to hear from you.
Well, I learned a long time ago, I actually call it my number one rule of school reform. You cannot touch a school in any significant way. You can't change the fundamental building blocks of how we organize, what we teach, when we teach, where we teach. You can't touch a school without touching the culture of the surrounding town. I watched folks in Missouri, administrators, teacher leaders, organize themselves in ways in which they were certain if they adopted these changes, if they pushed the envelope, that they would increase student success. And they did this on their own time, after hours, usually sitting around tables piled high with carbohydrates and caffeine and notebooks. And they worked and they studied and they went to conferences and they brought in consultants. And after about 15 to 18 months of all this very hard work, the only thing that changed in those school districts, it wasn't curriculum, it wasn't instruction, it wasn't assessment. The only thing that changed was the superintendent. Because what happened was a group of people in the community gathered together underneath the banner that read, "That ain't the way we do it round here." And as a result, all progress came to a roaring halt. I saw this dozens and dozens of times, and that led me to conclude you can't touch a school without touching the culture of the town. And if you follow that to its logical conclusion, what it means is if we're really interested in increasing student success, broadly defined, way beyond a stupid, low-bid, machine-scored standardized test. If you're really interested in increasing student success, you have to do more than change the schools. You have to change Missouri. And so that's what the whole thrust of my work is these days, helping build an understanding of why it's essential that your members begin a conversation, one community at a time, build a conversation that results in more trust and support. Because it's at the risk of selling, as the title of my book says, schools cannot do it alone. You're going to need increase community support. And that's what we're going to talk about.
It sounds like a quite a big topic. And what do you hope our members take away from the conversation?
Well, a better understanding of the fact, look, this is a tad presumptuous, but I kind of know your members. I've been doing this a long time. I know the kinds of folks that are going to come to this conference. The room is going to be crawling with strong type A personalities. That's my audience at your event. And many of them are veterans, and many of them feel, if you would just leave me alone, I could get this job done. Well, the fact of the matter is that's not true. It has become much too complex, and the issues are so broad, again, transcending the walls of the school. They're going to need support. You're going to need to build the number of allies that you have in your local community that will rally to your aid. And so I'm always hoping that I increase the understanding of why this conversation is necessary. But that's not enough. What I intend to do, and always hope I accomplish, is to give everybody in the audience concrete things that they can do without adding almost anything. There's a little weasel word in there, almost. Without adding almost anything to what is already a ridiculous list of responsibilities. Just give them away very effectively on their own terms, at their convenience, to begin to build understanding, trust, and support in the community. Something concrete they can walk away with and start the next day.
Well, we're very much looking forward to hearing your keynote, and the keynote will be on Friday, November 15th during the general session at our 2013 MSTA convention. Thank you so much for joining us, Jamie, and have a great rest of your day.
Good. I look forward to seeing everyone.
That's this edition of The Pulse. Thanks for listening. Remember, you can hear this podcast again and our past episodes on our website, msta.org, and on iTunes.